Before I get into this video, I want to remind you to enter our giveaways. We have two of them going on. One of them is for a PlayStation 5, an Xbox Series X, or a Nintendo Switch. The other is for 2 copies of Pikmin 3 Deluxe. So you can like, comment on this video, subscribe to the channel, hit that bell icon, all that jazz. Go down to the description to find out more details on how to enter these giveaways. All right, so this is some interesting news, and it's news for both the Xbox Series X and the PlayStation 5. So we now know, because the Xbox Series X is in reviewers' hands, it's in the media's hands, that it has about 802 to 806 gigabytes of usable storage space. Now, it advertises itself as 1 terabyte, but we all knew that it was never going to be a full terabyte. And some people speculated that this was because, it's going to, it's got to have that redundancy, right? Microsoft's not counting in redundancy, because with SSDs, you need to have a decent chunk of storage set aside for redundancy, or the SSD is going to be prone to crashing and losing data. That's just the way flash memory works. You have to have some available space for redundancy. Well, PlayStation 5 announced, that they were going to have like 850 gigs or whatever it was of space available on the PlayStation 5. And this, people thought, was because Sony was being honest. They set 150 gigs aside for redundancy, which they probably did. And they viewed Microsoft as is it really going to be a terabyte? So now that we know it's 806, we found out that the reason it's 806 is because essentially the operating system on the Xbox Series X takes up almost 200 gigs of storage space. So Microsoft wasn't lying about the 1 terabyte available. It's just so much of the available space is going to be used for the operating system and other various tasks. So it's actually a bigger hard drive, technically, inside the Xbox Series X than 1 terabyte, because they added, probably, based on my estimations, another 250 gigs for redundancy that they're not advertising publicly. So it's more like a 1.25 terabyte hard drive, but 250 gigs for redundancy, plus another 200 for the OS and other various system-related operations. So the PlayStation 5 now has a rumor out there as well, that the SSD for the PlayStation 5 only has 650 gigs available for games. So 175 gigabytes for the operating system, in addition to the amount they have taken up for redundancy. This comes from @IronMan PS6, who's been extremely accurate. But there's multiple people putting this out there, Games and Wario as well. So the storage capacity of the PlayStation 5 and PlayStation 5 Digital Edition is 825 gigabytes. It's not 1 terabyte with 175 gigabyte reserved for system storage. 825 is written on the retail box. You are getting just over 700 gigabytes of user available storage on the SSD. This is what Starboy Tony Stark had to say, Iron Man PS6. But Marlin Gaming Nation corrects him and goes, PS5 operating system requires 175 gigabytes. That's insane. It actually leaves you with 650 gigabytes, and that's not enough for games and other media content. Expendable SSD is a must. I'm waiting on confirmation on this. Let me know what you guys think. I will ask a few devs. So basically, because of the operating size being confirmed out there, it sounds like 650 gigs is what's available. And when you consider that Miles Morales is over 100 gigabytes, this gives you room for roughly 6 next-gen games on a PlayStation 5. And for a lot of people, that is just not acceptable. Now, we know 1 terabyte of extra storage, of extra SSD storage on the Xbox Series X costs $220. And it's highly likely that the PlayStation 5 is going to cost the same, if not more, because if you remember, the SSD technology inside the PlayStation 5 is actually faster than the one that's inside the Xbox Series X. Now, whether this is because the Series X is using Gen 3 SSDs versus the PlayStation 5 using Gen 4 SSDs, or if they're both using Gen 4 SSDs, but PlayStation 5 has a better controller. That's been something that was speculated when Sony went into the whole technical spiel earlier this year before they even unveiled the PlayStation 5, where they talked about how, the SSD tech, they talked a lot about it, and it sounded like they had a customized controller that's just going to get more speeds out of the SSD than Microsoft is getting. And that's fine. But that also means that the storage might cost more than the $220 that Microsoft put out there. Now, we don't have confirmation from PlayStation 5 that you can use external hard drives yet. We know on the Series X, external hard drives are allowed for game storage. You can't play games off of it, but you are allowed to seamlessly transfer games from that external storage to the internal drive and back and forth quite easily. And speaking from experience as a PC gamer, it's actually a really, really quick process. Even 100 gigs, you can get moved within minutes. So it's not that big of a deal. So if you can't afford the terabyte of extra storage for $220. You can just use currently existing external hard drives that at least, this is the big thing, you're going to want it to have 3.1 USB compatibility for maximum transfer speeds between the SSD and the external hard drive. So yeah, it's a little bit of a pain to move games back and forth, but you don't have to re-download them. I think that's the big thing there is you can get an external drive and don't need to re-download your games, because the downloading is what hits people bandwidth. Sometimes internet's down, various reasons that you might not want to download, and re-downloading things is not faster than local transfers, even over USB 3.1. Even if you happen to have, say, one of those infamous fiber connections out there. If you even have one of those, it's still quicker to do local transfers over USB 3.1. So again, we know that is supported on Xbox Series X. We don't know if PlayStation 5 supports it. In fact, there's quite a lot of things we don't know about the PlayStation 5, surprisingly. The biggest thing we don't know about Series X is games. We know about games with PlayStation 5, and for some people, that's all that matters. But now that this news is coming out, you have to start to wonder, why didn't these platforms include more storage? I was of mind for next gen. We needed 1.5 to 2 terabytes of usable storage, and now we don't even have a terabyte of usable storage in either of them. Yes, the Xbox Series X has more, but still, it's not enough. I mean, if you think about it logically, you're basically putting about 6 AAA new gen games on a PlayStation 5. You can do 8 on an Xbox Series X. Great that it supports external storage, but I'm just saying that it's not enough. And I think they should have offered another version of these systems. They should have went with a $599 version that offered an additional full terabyte of storage. So then you get 1.8 usable terabytes on the Xbox Series X, and then 1.65 usable on the PlayStation 5, and they could have offered that for $100 more. And I think there's a lot of people that would have paid that $100 premium, especially when you consider the extra terabyte cards are $200. So if you want to get that same 1.8 available on the Xbox Series X on launch, you're not just spending the $500 plus tax. You also have to spend an additional $220, bringing the total to $720 on an Xbox Series X, and likely very similar for the PlayStation 5 to get that type of storage. People would have gladly paid $100 more. Maybe, of course, at that $220, maybe the profit margins aren't that high. Maybe that $20 is the profit margin. So maybe these system manufacturers didn't want to lose even more money on their systems despite charging $100 more. Remember, I know flash memory prices have come down, but this is the latest and greatest SSD technology, Gen 4, which is pretty pricey, even on PC. People that buy the motherboards that support PCIe Gen 4 and obviously the compatible Ryzen CPUs, because I don't think there's any Intel CPUs on the market currently that support Gen 4 yet. That'll probably change here by next year. But the point is that I think the prices are really pricey. I was looking up a terabyte. It's around $200. So they're charging right around market value for what PCI Gen 4 1 terabyte drives go for. So the prices, I guess, shouldn't be surprising. It just feels that way because we're so used to being able to buy a terabyte for walk in and spend $50 on a terabyte of external storage at Walmart or something, and there you go. That you have an extra terabyte for your current gen system, and you can still do that on the Series X. You just can't play games locally off it. Again, make sure it's PCIe USB Gen 3.1 to maximize those transfer speeds. And by the way, most of the time, if you go buy a new storage device, it will be that. Sometimes you guys spend up to $100, but if you go on Amazon, you could find a few. In fact, maybe if I find a few external drives, if you're interested in a Series X or a Series S, and you want some extra storage just to have your games local, I'll put a couple links down in the description to some drives I suggest that I have some experience with, because I don't know yet if I'm going to be buying a memory card day one or not. I can't decide. It's pretty pricey, and I'm not sure that I could justify it at launch, but we'll see. It's going to be difficult with the Series X because there's so many games available at launch because of the backwards compatibility and because of Game Pass that you can fill up that hard drive literally day one. So it's going to be interesting. As for PlayStation 5, I'm not sure what Sony's going to do here. It already didn't sound good on the box when they couldn't put a full terabyte on the box, and now they don't even have anywhere close to a full terabyte. It's closer to a half a terabyte, which is much closer to what the Series S has. Now, the thing is, you got to imagine the Series S being advertised at 512. It probably has a little more for redundancy, but then you got to minus the OS from that, and you're left with 300 on the Series S. Like, you can install theoretically 3 games that are next gen on the Series S. Now, they try to compensate it by arguing that games are going to be 30% smaller because they don't need to include 4K assets. So you'll save some space there. So maybe the games, instead of being 100 gigs, will be 70. So then you get what, again, 4 games that you can install. Still less than you can get on a Series X at 8. But yeah, you're going to need expandable storage. This is going to be like an added cost. So when you hear about these prices of the systems at $499, you basically need to consider they're really $699. They're really $699 because you're going to need that extra storage. You're going to want that extra local storage, at least a terabyte extra. So honestly, if you're looking at next gen, that $499 price point sounds great, but I mean, let's be realistic. You need $699. You need $750 or so. 750 bones in your bank if you really want to truly enjoy next gen without having to frustratingly move games around and uninstall and reinstall and archive all the time. I mean, it's kind of like the cost of the Switch, right? You buy a Switch for $299, but if you ever plan to use digital games, then if you're planning to use digital games on a Switch, the cost of the Switch isn't really $299. You're going to need at least a 128 gig SSD card, if not more. So it's more like $350. If you're going all the way up to 512 or more, it's really $399. So there's that added cost that needs to be considered when you buy these platforms, just like it's considered for Switch. So yeah, that's just my opinion. That's just my opinion. Anyways, my thoughts on all this. You guys let me know what you think down in the comments below. I am the Thin Robo Gents from Nintendo Prime, and I'll catch all of you guys in the next video.